Well, I would like to say that I'm saying this not without any scientific data, that if AAK today was to stop doing what it's doing, the construction industry in Kenya will suffer. We are very big on advocacy, and particularly on the issues of excellence through the push for professionalizing the industry, because we think, without the industry being professional, without people doing things professionally, following regulations, following the laws, we are not going to go anywhere. And there's evidence that if we continue with the trend in which we are continuing, we might not end up with well-built urban centers in the future. And of course, the challenge is that it's big, because we are looking at the speed at which we are growing. The population is growing at the speed in which our urban areas are transforming. It's so rapid that we as AAK, we are trying to catch up. And I feel like perhaps the lack of capacity is cutting across, either through issues of governance, issues of expertise, and even issues of, for example, things to do with the materials, sufficient good quality materials. So we are trying to see how we can advocate for all those to be bridged, and we can transform our urban centers for the future. Yeah. We have a broad team. We try to, because we are an umbrella body actually, and our main target is to look at the whole industry as a whole, and look at it as from a perspective that collaboration with the various professionals. Right now we are accounting for 8 professions in the sector, and of course we speak for majority for all the whole sector. And also we have the various cadres, from what you call the regulated to the emerging stroke non-regulated, to the ones who are usually considered to be the workforce, but yet they are not considered, they're not regulated. The technologists, the technicians, the licentiates, the people who do diplomas, and they're the ones doing the actual work, but somehow they're not in the fold of what is called regulated professional. But in AAK, we have all those categories in our membership, because it's important for us to realize that these cities we are building are not being built by white-collar professionals. They're being built by everyone else, including developers who are self-built. So my team currently constitutes of the executive committee, which has the 4 different professions, and our structure of the rest of the council, that is including the chapter councils. The 8 chapter councils include technologies or licentiate representatives, and we've even gone further to have student representatives, because we want to have what we call the whole structure of the built environment professional being involved. First of all, we worked very well with the previous president, since we were together also in the chapter, the Architects Chapter Council. We also worked very well together in the last session, and mine is also to see how we can make it even better. And right now we are looking at about 5 items of strategy that we are working towards, and hopefully develop a 5-year strategic plan very soon. We're starting off with the issues of governance and sustainability, because we need to look at AAK from the perspective of efficiency and lean teams, but at the same time it needs to be financially sustainable. The challenges as we're going through is mostly financial, in terms of resourcing, because the work we are doing requires a lot of resources, and we also need to have a very lean, efficient council. We have almost 100 council members, so we are trying to see how we can make every member of the council work, and also just to expand our revenue, so that we are able to be financially stable, so that we can be able to do all that pertains our advocacy matters. The second issue is in terms of professions, regulation, because like I mentioned earlier, we have about half of our chapters, 4 chapters are not regulated or can be considered to be emerging, and we are looking at how can this be part of what the government regulates. Of course, the issue is also about the technologists and the licentiates, and then also looking at foreign practitioners. All this, because it is one thing to register people and have them work here. It's quite another to make sure that they do the right thing, and that can only happen if they are regulated. The third item we're looking at is urban planning and development control. It's a major challenge. Right now, we have 47 counties, each with their own development control guidelines, but they're all referring to the same, national documents for planning and for buildings, developing design of buildings. So there's no reason why we should have different development control regulations. And at the same time, we're also looking at urban plans. Most of our urban plans, we are lacking, plans for the greater plans for the cities, but even the lower levels of the local areas. And also issue of regularization. There's a lot of irregular development. Majority of our buildings are actually irregular. Even currently as we speak, majority of what is currently ongoing being built is irregular. So we need to look at that very carefully. Finally, I can talk about what we are looking at as a session in terms of business practice for our members. We are trying to see how we can optimize how our members do their work through standard operating procedure documents, contract management issues, disciplinary committee amongst our members, because we know in terms of what we call quacks or malpractice, the people who are enabling it are people who are registered, some of our members. So we need to do that, and of course see how we can improve the business space for our members, especially through the green building financing. Well, interestingly, we are growing, but the lens through which we are seeing this growth is what might differ. As built environment professionals, we are trying to imagine a situation where are we building utopias or are we building dystopias? Right now, if you look at all the statistics and then what, if you look at it from a critical professional point of view, it is growing, but not in the positive way. So what will happen is that yes, we'll have more buildings. There's a lot of construction. I mean, if you look at Nairobi, there's buildings everywhere. There's road projects, there's infrastructure projects going on everywhere. But if you look at it through the lens of sustainable design, if you look at it through the lens of whether we are building quality spaces are our cities becoming livable? And I would tell you no, because the population is pressurizing the growth of the city, but we are not having proper plans. We are not having strategies which are for future-proofing our cities. Right now, we are just growing amorphously, and people are building unchecked, and that is something we should be concerned about. I wouldn't be worried about the growth. I would be worried about the nature of the growth. Well, let's put it this way. There's been a lot of noise, especially within the players, the professionals and the sector, about the building code. It has been long coming. Revision of the building code has been done for a period of time. So within the industry, the noise is sufficient. And I know what the NCS is doing. In fact, we are collaborating with them on how we can push this forward. Right now, I would even say we are having a lot of very close discussions about how we can then escalate this message. Because our message is simple, that the building code has not been revised, or the building code is not intended for professionals. It's not intended for architects and whatever only. The building code is intended for the sector. So if a fundi is building, if a developer is building, they need to refer to the building code. So we are trying to create an avenue where we can reach to the general public. In fact, there is a popular version that has been developed of the building code, for example. The idea is that people need to know this information exists and they can refer to it. And whether you have an architect or an engineer on your project, because you could be doing things on your own, you need to follow the regulations, you need to look at the building code and let it be the reference. I would say that NCA is currently working hard, and I know since we are collaborating with them, very soon this is going to be common knowledge. I would say the challenge now would be enforceability. How do we ensure that people follow these guidelines? And even if you don't know they exist, the first thing you need to do is also ask questions. Where do I get this information? Then you'll be directed. And I think we are on the right track so far. All right. We are 8 chapters, and some of our chapters, who are disgruntled, and of course with good reason, aired their views, and their views was very clear. And of course, as an association, we support all our chapters equally, and we think it was necessary for the chapters to actually make that necessary noise. We think that in terms of the building code, it's not the end in itself, because the building code references the legislation, the existing legislation. So if the building code is referring, for example, to a particular profession, they'll be talking about it in reference to, for example, the architects and quality surveyors, CAP 525, for example. The issue here is that they have a point, and I think whatever avenue you use to get your point heard, for me, it is necessary. Now, whether the building code, because what we know is that the discussions around the building code has always been that moving forward, we are looking at I think 5-year cycle of reviews. Okay, there was also the fact that the sponsors of the building code, that is the Ministry of Works, where it's domiciled together with the NCA, had given their word that they will find a way of recognizing, rather mentioning the other profession. The only difference would come in who is responsible at the end of the day. Because if you are not regulated, whether you are mentioned in the building code or not, you're not liable. You might be mentioned, but if, for example, the regulation, the laws recognizes an architect or an engineer, then that person is one who's legally liable. But that said, the building code could be a good avenue to trigger, and then the mother legislations for all the professions to be able to be recognized. And then, of course, it comes with the burden of also regulation, and at the same time, continuous professional development. And the truth of the matter is that as AAK, we are currently self-regulating. Okay, so the landscape architects chapter, for example, they actually do professional exam at the association with our examination board here. We have the other ones like the construction project managers and the interior designers. The whole setup of AAK is also to regulate the industry as a whole and also the individual professions. So we are self-regulating. The only difference here would be the idea of recognition by the laws of the land actually helps to put these professions not as an option. Because right now, if for example you go to DEB for approvals, you don't require landscape design. But if we are going to start thinking about going green, we're going to start thinking about doing climate sensitive projects. If you decide to do environmentally sound projects, landscape architecture becomes core. If you're going to create spaces which are more livable, we cannot say that landscape architecture is optional. We cannot say interior design, which actually makes, we spend a lot of time indoors actually as human beings. Maybe up to 90% of our time we spend indoors. We can't say that interior design is an option that can be left to any random person to call themselves. So what we are saying is that all this must be captured within our legal framework and cascade down the entire level of what we'd call development control, from the level of planning all the way to the interior fit out. And that, if that is checked, then it means that we'll end up with the quality spaces. First, I'd like to tackle the issue, what is the problem? The last question you posed. The issue is not necessarily just ethics and malpractice. Construction projects are very complex, and it doesn't matter what size of project you are handling, they are very complex. And the most critical thing we need to be thinking about is that what is the process? Are we following the process? Are we following the process? Because even a surgery in a hospital can go wrong, being done by a very qualified surgeon. The question is, if we talk about issues of malpractice, if we talk about issues of professional and ethical conduct, we must demonstrate first that the person who's doing this thing did not follow the procedure. Okay, so I would even say that not necessarily that all the signboards have our members, because I believe we have about 50% of the industry as our membership. So these are still a big number out there. And I'm not saying that our members are not unethical. We cannot do unethical things. It is possible. We can be compromised. And these are the things we're saying, that we are actually looking at setting up a permanent disciplinary committee within AAK, because we receive these complaints anyway. Last year alone, we received quite a number of complaints, especially from the general public, complaining about our members. We don't assume our members are wrong until we prove that they are culpable. The main problem is that the issues of following procedure can be compromised. And if you check the National Building Inspectorate and the National Construction Authority surveys that was done a couple of years ago about the safety of buildings, I think they did a survey of over 4,000 buildings. Majority of them were found not to be using professionals. The majority of them will use professionals, rather a small percentage, about half of them will use professionals up to the level of drawings and approvals. During the construction process, you'll find that almost all of them did not bother following through. So you'll find there's a name of a consultant there on the signboard, because once you append your name against the drawing, when it goes to approval, it comes out with that number for the approval number from the county, the approval number from other authorities like NCA. Your name will appear on the signboard, but you might not be involved during the construction. And that's the most critical bit. Making the drawing, for me and for us, what we feel is not the end of the game. In fact, we have this problem where the members of public and our developers look at it like they are looking for a mchoro. They want a plan. But a plan involves also the implementation bit, and that's the most critical. This day by day improvements, because you can also have improvement during the construction. You can also have very critical site conditions that were not seen. Like the case of that building you mentioned in Mombasa. There's a very good chance that maybe the topographical survey that was done, and the geotechnical survey, actually, that's what I'm referring to. The geotechnical survey that was done maybe did not capture the depths. And I know this happens, especially sometimes in Mombasa, where you'd find a strat, the layer of soil might be hard up to some level. Then below it, there could be a soft, layer. And if you don't do a much deeper excavation, for example, you might find that these are things that will come out later when the building is built up. So if consultants were not involved during that time, what will happen? Those problems will come up. So for me, I think the main problem is that we need to follow the process end to end, and also appreciate the fact that kazi ya mjengo is not as simple as we imagine. It is complex. That's why it involves the different professions, it involves different suppliers, it involves different types of fundis. You can't give one fundi to do everything end to end. You have different types, and you have contractors and subcontractors. If you follow the process, I think we can be able to stem this issue of collapse of buildings, and also it's possible for us to stem malpractice. So with the Mulika Mjengo campaign, it's under the Jeuna Mjengo campaign. So Mulika Mjengo is a subset of Jeuna Mjengo. Jeuna Mjengo is a continuous campaign. It's an annual campaign. and now Mulika Mjengo has just joined it. The idea is that our job is to sensitize the public about what to look out for. It's not necessarily for us to, we couldn't have the capacity to go out to every site. What we want, and we don't want to react to things which are dramatic, like a building collapse, which in my opinion is too late. We want to approach it from the perspective of a curative, a preventive rather than a curative, because we have other campaigns which highlight the issues of looking at construction from the point of how can we prevent that eventual dramatic tragic end. And that could start off by just looking at what we look at. For example, we have the healthy homes guidelines and checklist, some basic things, and we must emphasize the fact that a collapsed building is not the only defect that we have in building. In fact, the worst case scenario is where we have unhealthy buildings, where the spaces are not good quality for living, and they end up making the residents sick, so that they could end up being affected by conditions that are created by the built environment, maybe due to the indoor air quality, basic things like the materials, the kind of paint that is used in there. Is it lead free? Is there cross ventilation in their space? Is there daylight? All these things we want to focus on, so that by the time you end up with a collapse, then it's a very dramatic end. So again, the majority of our buildings right now are irregular, and those also need to be checked. So we are also hoping to find a way of rolling out the healthy homes guidelines and checklists to the public, even as we are looking at of course, the more dramatic one, which is the building collapses. That's a difficult question to answer. I might have to do a study on that. The reason why, yes, sure, of course. One, we have a challenge in terms of resourcing. I put it again that way, and that will show off maybe in a few years. Since we started, now we have 5 schools actually teaching built environment courses, but we still have challenges in terms of like landscape architecture. We just have 1 school, for example. We have 5 doing architecture. I think we have 4 doing engineering, or was it 3? I'll have to check. I'll need to be fact checked on that. But there could be a challenge because we are having a bigger population of built environment professionals coming out, and for education of the built environment, it's also about the investment that the university puts, and a lot of our universities are now having cash crunches. So training, for example, an engineer is not cheap. Training an architect is not cheap. Training a landscape architect, interior designer, it's costly compared to an average university degree. So the quality of the graduates might be compromised, not on the basis of intentional, but on the basis that there is no resources, there's not enough resources that is being put in. And then on top of that, we have a challenge of transitioning, especially for industrial placements, the so-called attachments, internships, where we have a challenge with our student members getting spaces where they can learn industry knowledge. Now, if we don't sort that problem, I think in the next few years we're going to have a lot of graduates out there with those papers, but with the poor quality knowledge and lack of exposure. And then now we're going to have a challenge in terms of taking after that, because the current capacity is that we have less professionals out here. There's a lot of work, not able to catch up with that. So we need to start off at the point of proper training, proper resourcing of our schools. And then as AAK, we're going to emphasize and we are trying to create a platform where our members in the industry can create opportunities for graduates to come and join in and learn. And we're even advising our student members that you don't have to be employed. It's because there's a challenge in employment. So we are telling our students sometimes you can be attached to an industry specialist or an industry an affiliate industry. So if, for example, you are an interior designer, you can work with a supplier who does certain kind of interior fit outs, and you can learn a trade there, so that we create an opportunity where our young budding professionals we don't expect that they come from school 100%. In fact, at the end of the day, there's a lot you learn out here, and the theory does not necessarily translate to practice. So we want to create that nexus, which is more efficient in terms of training.